Hey tea heads, this is Don from Mayleaf. In this video, appreciating terpenes in Bai Hao Oolong. In this video, we're going to be discussing the importance of terpenes in this tea. We're going to scope the tea and then we're going to taste the tea. This video is going to go onto the tea masterclasses and the single tea tastings playlist. If at any point in time you enjoy this video, then please give the video the thumbs up. The more thumbs in the air, the more tea videos are going to come your way. And if you haven't subscribed to our YouTube channel yet, then go click that button. Dongfang Meizhen, also known as Bai Hao Oolong, aka Eastern Beauty, aka Oriental Beauty. It's also known as Braggers tea and as Five Colors tea. There are lots of names for this tea and we'll talk about the history of those names in a second. But first, I would like to introduce, for those that don't know, the concept of terpenes. Terpenes are volatile aromatics or fragrances that are created naturally by plants in order to help them to survive and to propagate. So a plant doesn't have legs, it can't run away from predators, and similarly it can't go and find any insects or creatures that it needs in order to help it to propagate. Instead, a plant releases terpenes or fragrances to either attract or to repel those creatures, insects, or even humans. So those of you who like wine will know that the vocabulary of wine is often dominated by the discussion of terpenes. And for those who are interested in other medicinal herbs, you will also know that terpenes have a huge impact on not just flavor, but they can also modulate the psychoactive effects of those medicinal herbs. I'm not going to be talking about the physiological effects of terpenes in this video. Instead, I'm going to be focusing on the aromatics and the fragrance of terpenes. And the reason why I've picked this Bai Hao Oolong or Eastern Beauty tea out is because this tea is produced in such a way to amplify the level of terpenes, and the result is an incredibly aromatic tea and is used by tea sellers throughout the world to really attract people into the world of true tea. The reason for that is if you've got somebody who's kind of dabbling on the outskirts of tea, maybe they're drinking a lot of artificially scented tea, or maybe they're not really into tea at all and they don't understand the level of aromatics and the level of variety of flavors that you can get out of true tea, then this is a great gateway tea. This is a great tea to start them off because it's in your face, it's powerful, it's so aromatic, and if you get a good Bai Hao Oolong, you will never forget it. So let's talk about the history of this tea. This tea comes from Taiwan. It's relatively short history, about 100 years or less. The story goes, and we never know how accurate these stories are, but the story goes that Taiwanese tea farmers in around the 1930s, they had all come from Fujian province and they'd brought the tradition of Fujianese oolongs to Taiwan. But maybe with a bit of influence from Japan, they were starting to experiment with teas. Now, the traditional knowledge of tea is if the tea plants are attacked by insects, in other words, they're bitten and you can see discoloration on the leaf, then you can't make good tea out of it and you should leave it alone. One farmer in the 1930s, the story goes, around 1933, and apparently his name was Mr. Jiang, although, again, we're not sure about the accuracy of this. He decided to take one of his summer teas that had been bitten by insects and produce tea out of it. And the result was an amazingly fragrant tea that won lots of competitions, commanded very high prices, and he sold it to international merchants, mostly the Japanese. Now, then he went back to his village, probably Beipu village in Taiwan, and started to brag about how he managed to turn a seemingly cheap tea into something that was very, very popular and very, very expensive. And so this is why this tea in Taiwan is known as Pengfeng Cha or Braggers tea. The history of the name Oriental Beauty or Eastern Beauty is that supposedly the Queen of England tasted this tea and was so enamored by it, she coined the name Oriental or Eastern Beauty. Now that story is probably a bit less easy to confirm, and in fact it's probably not true, but it's a nice story that is used by a lot of tea sellers out there. So that's the history of the tea, but let's actually go through and scope the tea and find out how much the insect bites of the leaves affect the terpene levels of the tea. So let's scope the tea. For those that don't know, scope stands for season, cultivar, origin, picking, processing, and elevation. So scope. S stands for season. This is predominantly a summer tea picked in June. The reason for that is that June is when it's most likely that these little insects called jacids or leaf hoppers will attack and bite and suck the juices out of the tea leaves. You can get spring Baihao Oolong, although that's less common because spring is going to attract less of the insects. So this is a summer tea picked in June. The cultivar. The cultivar of this tea is experimented with. Usually it's Chinchin cultivar. This is a Chinchin cultivar, although some farmers experiment with Bailu cultivar, some of them experiment with Jinshuan cultivar, some of them experiment with FB78 or TRES17, so these new experimental cultivars that have come out. Some people use the very traditional white monkey or hairy crab oolong cultivar. So they're constantly playing around with cultivars. And some producers, in order to try and mimic this intense fragrance of Baihao Oolong that they want to achieve, they will blend teas together. I advise you to try and find a single tea rather than a blended tea. That's always going to be a lot more of a kind of pure tasting tea. However, a lot of farmers do blend the cultivars. So the cultivars are mixed, but this is a Chinchin cultivar. Okay, the origin of this tea. Traditionally, the origin of this tea should be from Miaoli County or Hsinchu County in northwest in northwest Taiwan, where the altitudes are lower. But again, farmers are experimenting in other parts of Taiwan. Certainly, Baihao Oolong is also being made in China and in other countries like Thailand and like Vietnam, etc. So there's lots of countries that are trying to imitate this tea or try to produce a very high quality Oriental or Eastern beauty. All right, we've done S, C, and O. Next is P, which is picking and processing. And this is where we need to go into a little bit more detail. So let's forget the insects for a second. The processing of this tea without the insects is done in such a way to really increase the terpene content. So they pick the buds and the first two leaves, or the bud and the first leaf. So very fine picking. So similar to a very fine picking black tea or a fine picking green tea. They pick the buds and the first two leaves, and then they make it undergo a very hard wither. What that means is that they wither it for a very long time, upwards to 10 hours, maybe even longer. And because it withers for such a long time, the leaf has a chance to oxidize and it gets dark, which is why this tea is a darker tea. It's about 60 to 70% oxidized, so very close to a black tea. But also this withering process radically increases the terpene levels of the leaf, specifically linalool, linalool oxide, and geraniol. So these terpenes are found in other plants. So geraniol is found in citronella, is found in geranium, is found in pink roses. So those very, very floral, zesty aromatics are characteristic of geraniol. Linalool is also found in lots of flowers and fruits. So things like peaches, things like plums, pineapples, also in citrus fruits. It's also found in other herbs like mint, like cinnamon, and in cannabis, and in a variety of different plants. So linalool and geraniol combined make for a very aromatic, fresh, zesty, fruity, flowery tea. And the hard wither accelerates and accentuates those terpenes. After the leaf has been withered, it then goes through the standard processings of oolong. However, during the rolling phase of making this tea, they keep the leaf wet and they tend to keep it covered or also heated to about 60 to 70 degrees Celsius. And what that does is, even though it's gone past the fixing stage, that moist rolling process accentuates and accelerates the enzymatic activities to again turn up the terpene level in the tea. So forget about the insects for a second. Just by producing the tea in that way, in other words, a hard wither, and making sure that it stays moist and warm during the rolling phase, they can increase the level of terpenes, specifically geraniol and linalool, in the leaf. So you can have Oriental Beauty or Eastern Beauty made even though the leaf has not been attacked by the insects. Now, that is something that's really important to note because every single tea merchant out there says that their tea has been attacked by insects, and that's why it has this amazing fragrance. It doesn't have to be attacked by insects, and in fact, I would suggest that a very low percentage is actually attacked by insects, and that in fact, most people are selling very good Eastern Beauty or Oriental Beauty that has been processed in the way to increase geraniol and linalool. Okay, now let's talk about those insects. If it is attacked by these jacids or leaf hoppers, then what happens is the plant releases another terpene, and that terpene has got a very long scientific name. It's shortened as DOD, and that terpene is a precursor to hotrianol, and I hope that I'm pronouncing that properly. I'm not a scientist, but hotrianol is a specific terpene that's found in muscat grapes, Riesling grapes, Gewürztraminer grapes. It's also found in honey, and it's also found in elderflower and elderberry, and it's similar to geraniol and linalool in that it's fresh and zesty, but it's got a sweeter note, it's got a darker note, it's got that kind of dessert wine, sweet sourness to it. And that's the hotrianol. So when you're tasting Eastern Beauty, you will taste, no doubt, a very fragrant tea if it's done properly, but you're looking out for that extra dimension, that extra warmth, that extra dessert-like quality to turn it into a muscat taste, and this means that it has been attacked by those jacids. Interestingly, second flush Darjeeling is also attacked by insects and also has this characteristic muscatel taste which comes from hotrianol. That's the terpene. Right, so that's the picking and processing. Finally, we're going to talk about the elevation. That's the last letter on our scoping. So E stands for elevation, and this is a lower elevation tea. So this is about 500 meters. And again, the reason for that is that at higher elevations, you're less likely to get any attacks by these insects. These insects tend to live around the lower elevations where it's warmer and is more humid. So you've got that lower elevation tea. So this is a 500 meter tea. Right, there's your scoping. I'm going to pull the camera around and I'm going to show you what to look for when picking out your Eastern Beauty. One of the names of this tea is 5-color tea, and the reason for that is you should be looking for a mix of colors from whites to blacks to yellows, reds and some greens, and you can see that there's a nice mix of colors in this tea. You want to be looking for small leaves and buds. A lot of people put too much emphasis on how big and thick the buds are in Oriental Beauty or Eastern Beauty. I don't do that. I know that a lot of manufacturers will blend big buds into tea in order to try and increase the visual appeal of the tea. But as long as you're seeing the bud matter there, so these hairy white buds and young leaves and a variety of colors, then you're well on your way to finding some good Baihao Oolong. Right, the most important thing, as always, is the smell and the taste. Before I get into the brewing and tasting of this tea, which I'm really looking forward to, I want to give you some tips on how you can select your Baihao Oolong. Now, the least that you want is a Baihao Oolong which has been processed in the correct way, in other words, the hard withering and the heated, moist rolling process, so that the terpene levels of geraniol and linalool are amplified. And Baihao Oolong is one of the few teas that I would recommend you just sticking your nose into the dried leaf, hopefully before you purchase, because the terpene levels, if it's produced in the correct way, the terpene levels should be so high that you can pick up these lovely zesty floral fragrances from the dried leaf. If when you smell this leaf, it smells very woody and a bit dull, then you know it wasn't processed in the right way. Now remember, Bai Hao Oolong is made all over Asia at various different grades, and so it's worth you taking that extra step, if you can, to select according to smell. Now, the question of whether or not it's been insect bitten or not is much harder to gauge from the dry leaf. You can't really see the insect bites. A lot of people say look out for yellowing, etc. That's not true. The best way is to look at the price, because really this is one of the cases that you do get what you pay for. If the price of this tea is less than about $70 for 100 grams of this tea, then you can be almost certain that it's not insect bitten Oriental Beauty or Eastern Beauty. As soon as the farmer knows that it has been bitten by insects, the price radically increases, because they know they're introducing this third terpene, which has a very, very powerful muscat smell. So that's what you need to do when selecting your tea. Right, now we're going to brew these teas. I have 2 glass teapots here. These are both about 150 ml, and I've got 8 grams of the tea in here. And the reason I've got 2 is I'm going to experiment with 2 styles of brewing. One of them I'm going to be brewing at 75 degrees, which is about 170 degrees Fahrenheit, and the other one I'm going to be brewing at 90 degrees, which is about 190 degrees Fahrenheit. So when you come back, these will be brewed, and then we can taste. Tasting. Right, so the reason why I've done 2 different temperatures here is because I know that a lot of people like to brew Oriental Beauty or Eastern Beauty at a lower temperature. So I thought I would do a comparison for you. The difference in the leaves is apparent. The one that was brewed in cooler temperature, which is 75 degrees or 170 Fahrenheit, is not opened up as much as the 90 degree one here, which is 190 degrees Fahrenheit. Let's give these leaves a smell. They've cooled down a little bit. Incredible smell, like a fermented grape smell. It's got a woodiness to it, but it's also got that really intense grapey smell, this kind of muscat, muscatel, Rieslings, Gewürztraminer, those winey smells, very fermented. It's also got the geraniol and the linalool, so you've got the rose and the geranium, and you've got the citrus fruits, the peach, the plum, quite a distinct plumminess to it. Let's smell this one. Same, very much the same. Can't really pick up any difference there. All right, let's have a little look at the color. So I will show this to the camera. Hopefully that's in focus. So this is the 75 degree or 170, and this one here is the 90 degree or 190 degrees, and you can see that this one is definitely a richer, more ambrosial amber color compared to this one. And I have to say that I do prefer the color in the 190 degree liquor. Let's have a taste. This one tastes, you've got the aromatics of the peach, the plum, you've got rose, you've got a little bit of lychee flavor to it. It's very bright, it's very, the volatiles are very much present, but it's at the very high end, the very bright end. It's got a slight cinnamonness to it, and it's also got an almond nature to it. And if I smell the leaf, it's there as well. There's a kind of, you know when, okay, if I smell the empty cup, it's especially prevalent there. You know when you have pastry, so if you take, not dough, so nothing with yeast in, but if you just take butter and flour and you're making a pastry, say a tart, that raw pastry smell, also kind of similar to a raw almond milkiness to it, that kind of grated raw almonds, so that light milky fragrance. Nothing like a Jinshuan milkiness, but no butteriness, but this kind of light raw almond milkiness to it. But predominantly you have the very fresh and zesty aromatics. And the key here is because it was brewed at low temperature, the finish is very soft, very simple and soft, and it leaves a nice honey sweetness in my mouth. Let's try the hotter one. And immediately, when I bring this to my nose, I'm getting more volatiles. And the volatiles are different. It's like the brightness has been turned down, but they're a little bit more stewed, a little bit more strong and in your face. Right, so the difference between this one is in terms of the aromatics are very similar, but you're getting more of the hot trianol, you're getting more of the honey, you're getting more of the elderflower, you're getting more of the muscat taste to it. And the finish is completely different. The finish is a lot drier. You're getting a lot more minerality, a lot more stoniness to it. And this is something that you will want to experiment with. Some people really like the very bright, very aromatic and very soft, cooler temperature brewing. Some people prefer to have a little bit more of that minerality, a little bit more structure in it, and to bring out those hot trianol notes, those honey notes, the slightly darker, richer and more pungent notes of the tea. Let's give it another try. Yeah, this is beautiful, ambrosial and simple and pleasant. It's like a nectar. This one's stronger. It's got a little bit more woodiness. It's got a bit more of that amber kind of quality to it. It's got more of the honey. It's got more of a slightly drier wine taste to it. But the aromatics are very similar. You've got the rose, you've got the geraniol, you've got the linalool, you've got all of those terpenes. But I think that it's expressed better, in my opinion, in the warmer or hotter water. Now I know that this is also perfect for cold brewing. So if you want to really bring out those bright notes, cold brew this tea, it's incredible. And you can cold brew now after you've used it for a few flushes. Let's just give a smell to the empty cup. See, I'm not getting much on the empty cup. Yes, it's there. I'm getting a little bit of the muscat. I'm getting that raw almond pastry kind of smell to it. But this is so much stronger. You can tell that this has extracted the minerality. It's got so much more of the sweet, sour muscat grapes, more of that fermented smell. Yeah, this has got more elderflower. It's just got more complexity. And you can tell a lot by the empty cup because the amount of minerals that are released are affected when you smell. The smell of the empty cup demonstrates how much mineral has been extracted. And you're getting so much more off the hotter water. But this is completely up to you, as always. Just an example of 2 ways to brew the tea. What I will say is that it's almost impossible to overbrew a good Eastern Beauty. If it's a good quality tea, then you can be hitting it with 95-degree water and you can be brewing it long, and you've got a big window of playing between kind of cool temperatures, warmer temperatures, and different lengths of steeping time. It's very difficult to ruin this tea. This is a great tea to experiment with different brewing styles. And as the infusions move on, you will probably get around 6 or 7 really good infusions out of this tea. And as they move on, they will start to become a little bit more brisk. You'll get more of that minerality, even if you're brewing at lower temperature, and you'll get more of that kind of briskness, that stoniness that is more resembling a black tea. But honestly, guys, if you've never tried a good Eastern Beauty, pick some up. It is a mind-blowing tea, and those terpenes are next level. That's it, tea heads. If you made it to the end of this video, then please give the video the thumbs up. Check out our YouTube playlist and let us know if there are any videos that you'd like us to make. If you're ever in London, then come visit us in Camden to say hi and taste our wares. If you have any questions or comments, then please fire them over. Other than that, I'm Don May from Mayleaf. Thank you for being a part of the revelation of true tea. Stay away from the tea bags. Keep drinking the good stuff and spread the word, because nobody deserves bad tea. Bye.